everybody. Welcome back to Earth and Star Spiritual Wellness Center. I'm Mary, your friendly neighborhood preacher teacher, and today I have the one and only Kai Foxworth. Hey, Kai, how are you? Thanks for coming and hanging out with us today.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm doing really well. I had a really energetically cleansing weekend, but also some good lessons within it. So,
Absolutely. It was one of those weekends. I
yeah,
did a
big
different
energies.
big energies, and I did a different video this morning where it was like I was cleansing my house over the weekend, and then all
hmm
of a sudden, like, things start coming out of the woodwork, like, pow, pow, pow,
Yeah.
exploding everywhere. And I know I had
Oh,
sent you a text on Saturday, I think, and you're like, "Man, I'm not even in my body."
yeah. I was like, I'm just in the ether right now, trying to sift through some stuff. So I did some good grounding, and now I'm feeling very in my homeostasis.
I love that. Well, guys, Kai is just a very powerful healer. That's what originally drew me to them. It was this recognition of authenticity. It was like a vibe click. When I came across Kai, and Kai was gracious enough to, yeah, hey, I don't know you, but yes, let's go ahead and start talking. Let's get on the phone for a couple of hours and just get to know each other. And there's just a real authentic earth tribal kind of power here that you guys really don't want to miss. Trust me on this one. Trust me. There's healing power in that. Like, Kai is the type of person that when Kai is on there doing their healing stuff, and like, even if I'm not, when we're scrolling on TikTok, right? And you have your live healing shows, you can click it to enter into the live. I don't always click it because I don't feel like I want to be in the healing. I just want to, like, watch for 2 seconds. Even if I don't click it, I can still feel it. When you go,
Oh, yeah.
take that breath, I'm like, ah, I can feel it. And Kai is also a trauma informed breathwork worker. Is that what you call that?
Facilitator.
Facilitator. Yes, worker.
Yes, 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 facilitator. Big word.
Well, tell us a little bit about you, what you do, how people can find you.
Well, the easiest way to find me is either through social media or going straight to my website. You can even just book a call to see how the vibe is between us before you do anything where you're booking an actual session. That's going to be on the first page of the website. And it'll just send me an email and then we can set it up. But otherwise, I am a trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, which means that I know from the basics all the way through breathwork that's going to help you actually release trauma that's stored in your body. So it's somatic. Um, I also have training in Reiki as well as quantum energy healing. I am a chakra practitioner, so I kind of have molded all of that together to kind of made my own brand of healing. It's interesting because as I've progressed, I now call myself like the healing Ant-Man because I literally just like go inside people's chakras and actually see the energies that way to remove them. It's very potent. And then I've also got an inner balance workshop that I'm going to be teaching starting the week of August 15th. I don't have a specific date quite yet. I'm deciding on the day. But that is juicy. I'm so excited to put that out. I've been working on it for a couple months and I'm going to finish it up here soon. And then I also do mentorship or spiritual guidance, whether it's a one-time call or I have a 12-week program that I just kind of solidified, that will take you from, your blockages, inner healing, going back in time to the present blockages and then to what you're building towards your future and how we can get you set up with tools so that you can stay grounded while pursuing that. So it's exciting. I've been doing a lot of work and I'm super stoked to share this with everyone.
I have clarifying questions.
Sure, sure, sure.
So first off, you're super, super excited about the inner balance. So I want to go further into that if you're
Hmm.
comfortable with it. But
Sure.
before I do that, can you explain somatic healing? Because when we talk about the trauma-informed breath work that becomes somatic, what
Hmm.
does that mean to your clients?
So somatic is going to be something that basically is either going to be physical movement or it's going to be some kind of like physical change within you. So, like for instance, something as easy as crying, that's somatic because you're releasing the energy of an emotion. So basically, if you have a stored emotion, that's going to go into your body and it's going to just sit there until you deal with it, which is why it's so important to go back and actually deal with those emotions and say, hey, you're safe to express yourself. But sometimes those emotions are from, 20, 30 years ago for some people or even longer. And so they're a little more stubborn, a little more stuck. So you have to do things like movement or breath work or even qigong, yoga. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. Even vocal toning. Vocal toning is actually really powerful with getting things to move or frequency healing. So it's just a matter of figuring out what works best for you in order to get it to move. And I found that breath, it's super easy because we have to do it to live, is a really great way in order for you to get that to move because there's different types of breath work where you can either go more aggressive. So that's going to help set your body up to move energy, or you can do relaxing techniques where you just and that's going to take you from your sympathetic nervous system to your parasympathetic, and that is your homeostasis, where you should be, your rest and relax, where rest and response, and then the sympathetic is your fight or flight or freeze. So you want to get out of the sympathetic and into the parasympathetic. And in order to do that, you have to move through feelings.
Out of the trauma into the healing, out of the
Mm-hmm.
ego into the
Exactly.
spirit. Beautiful. Whenever you did that gentle breath, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that feels so good.
I know.
I love that one where there's that little hum. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh
like
yeah, and that's the thing is that you pair those things. So the sound of your heart is ah. So if you do a sigh when you are actually having your breath release, so that's actually going to help put your body in a more relaxed mode in and of itself. So it's like compounding different little things in order to help yourself.
beautiful. Thank you. And what
Mm.
I'm over here taking notes. This is what I'm doing. If I'm not looking at you, I'm taking notes. So we have emotional release
Hmm.
is what I'm hearing. And with Jupiter moving into Cancer
Hmm.
in June, there's this huge emphasis on nurturing and emotional expansion, emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
not this kind of intelligence, but emotional opening and
Yeah. Heart
intelligence.
coherence.
So,
Hmm.
what's this inner balance workshop? Because I feel like that's going to be part of this somehow.
Oh, 100%. And I'm planning on incorporating breath work within it. So it's gonna be bang for the buck, right? And I also have two different options for payment. One includes one guidance session with me, the other includes two, as well as a healing session. So you can go as deeply into this as you'd like. And there will be workbook to go with it, as well as weekly breath work, weekly meditations, the whole nine. But the idea of inner balance is going to be all encompassing. It's an 8-week program. That is going to go from mind, body, spirit balance to inner child, higher self, present self balance to knowing how to maintain being grounded and on this plane without, it's like we're kites sometimes going into the ether, but we got to have somebody there to hold on to us. So this is being able to energetically do that for yourself, and to avoid going into psychosis, which I know we said we might go into a little bit later. But and then the biggest thing for me, and I think that is like the most prevalent, I would say, within my own experience, being a non-binary individual, is that balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and how that has nothing to do with gender and has everything to do with energy.
Let's talk about that. That was going to be the next thing I brought up because one, the center balance thing, it sounds amazing. I
Mm,
don't think I've seen in a single workshop all of those different elements put together before. You
yeah.
know, we sometimes we can balance the masculine and the feminine, or we talk about balancing the spiritual and the human, such as like
Hmm.
grounding, or if you want to come this way, or meditating if you want to go that way. But I've
Right.
never seen all those different elements put into like one workshop that
Yeah.
says
That's why it's
now
so juicy.
balance. Yes, it's very inclusive. I
Hmm.
really like that. uh, we're moving into a space, like we said, where we're very much into energetically the emotion of everything, which seems to come into more of the divine feminine, with Cancer
Hmm.
being
Yeah.
the archetype of the divine mother. So where would you like to go with that? Like, I know this is something that I feel like is really close to your heart as well to talk about.
Oh, 100%. Well, I think that as a society, we're an over masculinated society right now. And that to me is a deep patriarchal masculine wound that is basically coming up now and showing itself, and it has been showing itself as a temper tantrum
Mhm.
because men have forgotten what it's like. And I say men because that's predominant, because that's what society pushes us, right? If you're a man, you have to be masculine, which is insane because most of my male best friends are so sensitive. And I'm like, just feel it, you know? But I also feel very masculine. And I come from a household where it's predominantly women, but it's an incredibly masculinated energy because that's what was taught, that's what was comfortable. I would even the Great Depression's coming through right now as a very specific time for that masculinated energy to come through. And then what happened right after the Great Depression? We went to war.
Mhm.
Masculine, masculine, masculine. You know what I'm saying? So this is generational, and I have chills at its core. So with that, the masculine energies at B have forgotten that they're there to hold the container and to create the safety
Mhm.
for the feminine. And there has not been safety for the feminine in hundreds of years in that on a mass scale. And so that is why we're having such big energetic shifts. And that is why I am wanting to teach inner balance so much, because being biologically female, I had to heal my inner feminine first
Mhm.
before healing my inner masculine.
Mhm.
And I had this really silly but great experience last night. I had the song that Meg sings in Hercules stuck in my head, and I couldn't figure out why. So I watched the movie, and I realized that my feminine was finally like, I'm in love with my masculine too,
Mm.
inside. And I think that that's where it's like, and that's my goal with this class. My goal with this is that we have to stop looking for external validation, because we will not achieve inner balance or balance in our life period without going internal first, because we live life in a spiral. Okay. And but that spiral, imagine it going in and outside of you. You work on yourself going inward, that's going to start to show on the outside. Then you
Mhm.
go inward, go a little deeper. That's how you get higher in your spiral in life. So
And we always have to heal the divine feminine first. That's just
100%.
the way it works. Like male, female, non-binary,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what the gender
Period.
of the person, right? Period. Like you have to start you have to start in the divine feminine aspects of self, because that's the part that actually gets wounded when
Mm-hmm.
wounding. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is the part of you that's intuitive, that's cycling, that's beautiful. So when there's a
Mm-hmm.
wound, that's the part that's stuck.
Right.
And it's interesting to me knowing that, because then we shift to our own divine masculine, like, okay, now observe me going through my cycles. Now care
Mm-hmm.
for me. Now keep me safe. Now learn how to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
But is where I find that interesting space at is that in 3D life,
Mm-hmm.
you can't heal while you're still in your trauma. You can't heal when you're still actively unsafe, not just perceived unsafe,
Right.
but actively unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the masculine part.
Right. Where you
So,
take the action to get yourself out of the situation, which is another. point as well, is that the feminine is the rest.
Mm.
And we live in a society where rest is shamed. So we are actively shaming the feminine at every turn. You can't have feelings, and if you do, they can't be too big. They can't make people uncomfortable. And on top of that, wait, what do you mean you want to go take a fat nap in the middle of the day? Like that, we don't do that. You need to work. We work, that hustle and grind culture. Um, and it's true. You cannot heal trauma if you're constantly in staticky energy that doesn't make you feel safe. So the masculine kind of has to like make that first step to help the feminine get to the healing place so that she can take over.
Absolutely. You
Mm-hmm.
saw my face when you said that, right?
No,
Because Kai has actually not shamed me, but no-noed me for overworking.
I have.
Go outside, go take a break. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'll take my work outside. And they're like, no, no, hear me.
No, no, leave your work inside and you go outside.
Yes, this is something we
Mm-hmm.
hear. But for me, I will say part of that might actually have to do with masculine energy that I didn't think about it before. I use
Mm-hmm.
the excuse I have a Capricorn moon, which
Mm-hmm.
means that like emotionally I feel safe, I feel prepared, I feel
Mm-hmm.
accomplished when I know that I'm getting done everything that's in my brain. And I
Yeah.
get everything in my brain out, and then I feel like I can rest or even just rest in between. But I also feel like this was slightly ingrained because I was raised by my dad primarily,
Mm.
without loving mother figures, I'll say it that
Yeah.
way, being present. And so
Nurturers.
without nurturers, that's a good way to say that. And he worked all the time. What did you do?
I hit my knee on the desk and it shook.
Calm down. But he worked all the time. That was his role in our household, and he raised me, like,
Mm-hmm.
up through, being a teenager and up through childhood, and he always told me, "Well, you need to make sure you go to college, you need to have a job, you need to make sure your
Mm-hmm.
bills are paid because you're
Yep.
gonna be the breadwinner in your household." And until the day I got married. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was, "Why are you complaining about your husband? You need to listen. You need to go home. You need to work it out." Right? And then everything switched, and I felt like
Ew.
I was pushed under the
Just
rug.
ew.
I was like, I just didn't know what to do because that's
Yeah.
the push I was raised with.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of switched when I was introduced to a masculine relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It all kind of switched. But speaking of nurturing
Mm-hmm.
motherhoods and things like that, because that's more of what's coming up.
Right.
We know that there's this over masculine kind of energy, but we also know that that's coming up, and all that's going to start to heal and start to dissipate collectively as we
Mm-hmm.
come more into our emotional expansion and our emotional intelligence. So
Yeah.
now let's get into like those softer pieces, into
Mm-hmm.
those nurturing pieces. And a lot of that healing starts with ancestral wounds.
Yep. That's also in my class. Fun fact.
Oh, okay.
I forgot about it. There's so much in it. I can't remember all of it.
It sounds like it's a whopper, a doozy.
I'm honestly planning on having like tiers of it. Like I'll like this is just the first round and it's going to be the first section because the thing is as much as there's a divine feminine and masculine, there's also a divine mother and father within. There's a divine grandmother and grandfather within and they all have different energies even though they came from the same breath. So like there's this is more like an intro crash course. Um Especially great for people that like maybe can't afford mentorship and would need some like grounding energy in their like awakening process because like I think we those of us have been through the awakening process. We know it can get pretty confusing and overwhelming and you become like a human sponge or like a hungry hippo of information of spirituality and you're like "Ah, ah, 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 ah," you know what I mean. So That's the whole reason for it. But yeah, ancestral trauma is a huge part of inner balance because you have to understand why you chose your parents, because that's the hang up, right? We choose our parents. We choose the ancestral trauma that we break.
That we break.
Hmm.
Keyword. That
Hmm.
we break.
With the choice and the work. I mean, it's not that
Mhm.
like, you don't just choose your parents and like, I'm a generational curse breaker without any work.
Taking that first step towards action.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And
Hmm.
healing is the whole point. Taking these actions and coming into our realizations and our expansions is the whole point. What was your inspiration for understanding that?
Which part?
Because I'm not sure that the generational thing or the mother wound even or the nurturing wound, because I don't think that I've seen very many other people, including
I haven't seen any.
I mean,
And
I'm
that's,
trying
I
to
think,
I
is
don't
part
want
of it,
to
is
sound
that
kind of
I hadn't seen anyone, and my journey within has been all about figuring out how to balance, especially being incredibly neurodivergent, especially coming from such an unbalanced home and having such an unbalanced societal issue. And so for me, I found safety and understanding with myself at the deepest level I have experienced myself through intention and action as a pair, which is feminine and masculine working together, which
Mm,
is spirituality and earth working together, and
mm.
realizing that, which is light and dark. You know what I mean? There's so much that we have to understand with that. And then as well as going into the ancestral stuff is like, we're not, a thing that's missed a lot is this specific lifetime. We're not only here to break generational curses, we're here to actually repair soul wounds. And through that comes understanding the actual biological lineage that you were born into, as well as your soul lineage through things like the Akashic records, where you find out, like, for instance, both of my parents, ready for this, killed me in a past life
Oh,
for
fun.
different reasons. So I'm like, what is my soul doing? My soul was like, oh, two people that have murdered me before. I'm going to go be their kid. Like, what a
Let
psycho.
them try to keep you safe.
Right. And so I think that that kind of ties in as well, but that's part of the shtick. And also it helps you. It's so validating. It's
Mm.
validating understanding what you are breaking through and what it means, because I have all of my grandparents on the other side now and they are like, yeah, whoop, whoop. You know what I mean? Like,
Got your
and to
back.
see their reaction with what I'm doing, breaking free of the matrix, breaking free of the societal, little pigeonhole we get put in. It's been a gorgeous, gorgeous journey.
So, one thing that is coming up
Hmm.
for you, and one thing that I think kind of drew me to you to begin with, was this wild tribal warrior kind of energy. And you've even taught on it since then, and you call
Hmm.
that the warrior wound. Can you
Right.
talk a minute about like what that is and where this came from for you?
Absolutely. So, everybody, I feel not everybody, but a lot of people have heard of the witch wound, which is essentially like the healers being persecuted in past lifetimes, for being healers and not prescribing to the box that religion wanted to keep everybody in. And so that instilled soul fear. And this is why I'm saying that they're soul wounds, right? This is tying it in. Um, so with that, it dawned on me after I had an experience with my mother. So my mom has been one of my best friends my whole life. Apple did not fall far from the tree. I am like the spitting image of this woman with blue eyes. And we had a disagreement over this current administration's decisions and viewpoints on corporal punishment, which is um, being able to discipline children physically within the schools. And I realized that my mom was coming from it, one, from obviously a wounded place, but she was wanting an immediate gratification for behavior. to where I've worked with foster kids in the past, and I'm like, absolutely not. If the kid is that bad to where you get to that point, something's going on at home, period. And remembering that um, all you're doing is instilling more fear, and you're meeting that with even more abuse, which that's exactly why this world is riddled with narcissists and sociopaths right there, because people meet misbehavior and things that are uncomfortable and inconvenient for them with malice, with violence, with no patience, right? So um we weren't seeing eye to eye, obviously. And she basically said that she was in agreement. She was like, I think that should be okay. So, just even with me working with foster kids, the thing is that my mother watched my dad take hit me a couple times in life. I know for a fact at least twice. Um, and that was so incredibly invalidating that I had to hang up with her. I have not been on speaking terms with her. I love her. Don't get me wrong. I love her immensely still, and I send nothing but love and awareness to her, which, by the way, is my favorite thing to do when you have people that you don't agree with. I'll just be like, love and awareness.
I like
you
the
know,
awareness piece. We hear of sending them love, but I like to send them love and awareness.
and awareness, because I'm just like, you know what? I want you to become aware, because the thing is for me, it was almost more sad that there was an inner child within her that was okay with that, because of the time she was in school, like she dealt with that as well. And she even said in a text message to me the next day, she said, I don't feel like this marred me for life. And I'm like, well, congratulations, but I guess, but like, also that doesn't make it right. All you're doing is instigating the cycle of abuse, and I'm not okay with that. I'm here to break that. Right. So I had a huge emotional night, because I mean, it's my mom and I love her. And so I ended up having to cut the cord with her via help from Archangel Michael. Um, I sobbed for like 3 or 4 hours straight. And then the next morning I woke up, took a bath, and just like was like, it is what it is. I'm no longer associating myself on a deep connective level with people who will not protect my inner child, including my biological family. And until proven otherwise, not that I'm cutting my mom out of my life forever, but like I'm going to keep her at a safe distance for my inner child, because I'm going to be the person that she wasn't when that was happening. So basically, through that huge backstory, very sorry. Uh, through that, I got out of the tub, came into my room, and began to meditate. And it was like I closed my eyes, and the first thing I heard was chainmail. And then I heard, "This is your grandfather." And I was like, okay. So the next thing I know, I'm full armor walking down a hallway, and I'm walking into a chamber room. So now that I like remember the vision, I like see other people, but at the time I was only really aware of the king, which I knew in that moment. Upon laying eyes on the king, I was like, oh, that's my cousin. Knew that, like in that lifetime, right? And as I take steps closer, as the king is pacing back and forth in front of the throne, I realized that that soul is my mom's.
Mm.
So my king cousin mom. I don't know. I have to make everything humorous for my own health. But I we end up having some kind of exchange. And the next thing I know is there are 5 swords from King's Guards going into me.
Mm.
And basically through more meditation and imagery building, and also using my chat GPT a little bit, just to kind of help me organize my thoughts with everything, I realized that I was a divine protector. I was a warrior, and that is the whole reason. I was so high in my authenticity and created such a safe space. Other warriors sang songs about me. I have chills. The forest reacted to me in like an ethereal way. Children felt safe enough to come and say hello to a warrior,
Mm.
because of the type of authentic warrior that I was. And because of that, my grandfather was an advisor, hence why at the beginning he said, this is your grandfather, showing me this. he had spoken about how I was authentic and I was popular, which saying that to a king, they have two options: either match the level or become paranoid. My mother, king cousin, became paranoid. And that's how that happened. And basically through that I was working through the warrior wound, and that is being that sacred container holder and making people feel safe while fighting for the things that truly matter and being authentic in the process.
I love that. What stands out to me, so this was the life where she killed you then, where you were
Yeah.
killed by animal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What stands out to me about the ending of that, I mean, all of the beautiful actual, purposeful parts aside,
Yeah.
is that there were five swords.
Interesting. I haven't even
You haven't, have you?
I
Because
haven't. I love this. Keep going.
the five of swords is about choosing your battles to make peace.
Mm-hmm. That's
Because
so
when the
true.
five of swords typically comes out in tarot, this is about, it's signifying conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And the conflict is usually won through an unethical manner.
Mm-hmm.
So the overpowering that leads to dissatisfaction, emptiness. And so, like manipulation, being taken advantage of. And one thing that's interesting about the correlation between that vision and what's been happening with her in this
Mm-hmm.
life feels like, well, I was overpowered and went through this thing, which means I've normalized it. And now that's my baseline. And it's okay to see other people go through that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you were the one who had the swords
Mm-hmm.
and who's learning the ethics, who's learning the fulfillment, who's learning the satisfaction. So you're kind of reversing all of
Mm-hmm.
this energy, breaking generational curses, if you will.
Yep.
And I feel like, so I'm not trying to read anything, but I feel like things are really going to come back around with your mom because of this.
100%.
Because if, yes, because if this is like what you're here to do, she's going to compassionately and empathetically learn
Mm-hmm.
that it's not normal and it's not okay, which is what this whole generation is here to do. That's not
Mm-hmm.
normal. That's not okay. So we're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be okay with it. We're not going to allow it to continue. So I like that the warrior wound is creating the masculine safety, the
Mm-hmm.
divine masculine versus the
Yep.
toxic masculine energy, essentially.
Yep. That divine protector energy.
Not like the inner excitement, like, woo!
Yeah.
It kind of comes out like that. Oh my gosh, I love this. So, how does that tie into generational wealth? Because if you're stopping all of that junk and reversing it, like
Mm-hmm.
doing a reverse, and what ends up coming out this way?
So it's interesting that you're bringing that up because I just received a download the other day because I know that my generation specifically, there's a lot of us choosing not to have kids. I'm not saying I'm one of them. I just can't procreate naturally, so it has to be like a choice for me. But which I also don't believe you have to be biologically related to someone to be a parent. That's just my personal, and that's probably my foster system experience talking as well. But I think that with that, there's that authenticity call, right? Because we've one job while we're on this planet, and that is to be authentic.
Mm,
Whatever comes from that, it's probably going to include generational wealth. But we have to break the cycle of that too as a collective society. Ooh, chills are happening. Uh, and basically, how we've seen it go, and I'm even talking about my specific family. Like my family is not rich by any means, but they're definitely not hurting. They are
mm,
fine. But what do? They save money for their children. They are looking to create wealth for their family specifically. That's why we have families like the Rockefellers, like the Waltons, and stuff like that. We look at all these families that want to keep that money to themselves outside of the random charitable donation to make themselves look good and feel better, right? But like we also, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have generational wealth and not have a generation to pass it down to. So what are we supposed to be doing with that? Because we have to change the paradigm heading into this new one, right? We have to change the feeling on it. And that is literally to take generational wealth and build infrastructure and systems and programs that are actually going to create a foundation where people are going to be served, where there will never be a generation that will have to be on the street going hungry, because we're going to have systems in place for mental health issues, for drug abuse, and for those things to be healed. If you look at countries like Portugal, they decriminalized every single drug. And do you want to know what? They have reduced their drug problem by like 60 something for something wild. Because at the end of the day, drug abuse is a mental health issue. You're either escaping uh, something, whether a feeling or a person, or you're numbing yourself out again from a feeling or a person or a circumstance, situation, like whatever it is. Maybe even an inner child that got really hurt and you can't handle it, but you can. Is the secret. So it's about taking generational wealth and not looking at it as a my kids only, because the thing is if you have generational wealth that you can spread to a society, you're going to have more than enough to give to your children if you end up having any.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people out there who I'm kind of seeing this on a few different levels. What you said is really profound.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that and setting it up for the community and other people who could use that. There's also spiritual generational wealth. And
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about
that's,
that.
well, that's what you're even doing with breaking generational curses, is passing
Mm-hmm.
down that healing energy to whoever, even if you don't have kids, it ends up spreading out from you to your other family members and their children, and so on and so forth. And then your children and your lineage in future lives, because that wound and that karma isn't there anymore. What else fits into it is the people who receive from that particular generational wealth, because there are a lot of people who don't have wealth enough in their families to set things up for their children, and they're trying to create generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And these could be some of the people who are benefiting from the overflow that's being
Mm-hmm.
given in this society.
100%. And I love what you said, because I even went to not just spiritual. I think I would say of all the generational wealth to pass down, it is the emotional safety wealth that
Mm.
we can pass down to future generations. Like at this, because we're at that turning point. Like, and what does that look like? You know what I mean? And it's that you are allowed to have a feeling and you're allowed to express it, and that is okay. Because what happens, and this is something I saw in the foster system a lot. There's pretty much like a couple different archetypes that work with foster system kids. There are, but the main two that I noticed specifically in foster homes were either incredibly sweet, a lot of times religious, like mother archetypes, that especially my teenage boys were like, you know what I mean? Like, but she was doing excellent because she was just love, right? But then you would also have these other archetypes, which I saw way more than I cared to see. And that is someone who their inner child was so deeply wounded that they feel the need to come back in and be of service and help because they feel that they're healed, or maybe they don't feel that they're healed. I'm not going to speak for them. But what ends up happening is that they aren't healed, and that inner child, to make themselves feel better through this job or whatever the case may be, ends up triggering those kids, and then those kids trigger them, and then it's freaking chaos. So to have a generation of healed adults to be able to create safe containers for not just children but other adults, that's priceless.
I love that. I feel a happy joy coming up. And I like
Yeah,
that we went back to the somatic healing and the
I
energy,
know we're doing a little full circle dance a couple times. It's
the
nice.
spiral.
Yeah. Ah!
So how does all this there's two more things I want to talk about really. One of
Mhm.
these things I haven't even told you about yet.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm really gonna we're gonna fly by the seat of our pants on that one. In fact,
Well, that's how I live life, so that's
I
fine.
haven't even fully processed it yet. I'm thinking that I just want to throw it out there. But let's step into spiritual psychosis for a minute.
Hmm.
Um, because there's something uh just riding under the surface, I feel here that's coming up around spiritual psychosis
Hmm.
and what that means and what that looks like.
Yeah. So it's going to look different for everyone. I do think there is a decent tie between neurodivergence. I think there's also a decent tie with Kundalini awakenings. And so, but that's it's, and the thing is that there's never going to be a perfect answer for something like this because every journey, including Kundalini awakenings and spiritual psychosis, are unique to the individual. Some
Mhm.
are going to be more susceptible automatically because some people, their upper chakras have been online a lot longer than they realized. So their upper Merkaba is like, and they just need their bottom to catch up, right? So, I recently saw a video, and these girls were talking about how they had a Kundalini awakening that basically almost put them into spiritual psychosis. And their description of their psychosis specifically was not being able to tell what's real and what's not. That's deep. That's a very deep spiritual psychosis. Um, but no, but the thing that that does not talk about, that's very buoyancy. That's third eye, right?
Mhm.
There is an energetic psychosis that absolutely exists as well, because I believe I was in psychosis for about 2 months in December and January. And that's because I was attached to someone who was her third eye was incredibly wide open, but she had not worked through some of the emotional trauma and pain that she needed to. So she created a very confusing energy for my sentience. So I was energetically in psychosis and was like, my sister, she was like, when I talked to you, she was like, it didn't feel like I was talking to you. And I was like, I get that. You know what I mean? So I think it's just, and if there's anything that I can say that is like surefired to keep you more level, that is going to be things like breath work, meditation, and grounding. A combo of the three, like go outside, sit Indian style, feet in dirt, you know what I mean? And go into a breath work, especially if you're neurodivergent. Go into a breath work. What are the words I want to say? I don't even know.
Facilitator.
Well, I was gonna say a breathwork flow. That's what I'm trying to say.
I like
A
that.
breathwork flow. Because that I have not been able to meditate pretty much my entire life until I started doing breathwork because one, it's easier to meditate when you're in your parasympathetic nervous system.
Mhm.
I would say it's almost impossible actually to meditate in your sympathetic. Um, but doing breath work and like really honing in on the breath, that's going to help a lot. And that way you'll be able to experience ether, but completely grounded into Gaia and set your intention, because intention is that's a powerhouse in the spiritual world. Pure intention, that is gangbusters, dude. Like it is so good, but you have to match that energy with action in the physical, and that's how you get that balance.
Absolutely. I feel like that's it's just coming up and I can't even throw specifics out there. I just feel it somewhere
Mm-hmm.
under the energies. So someone needs to hear this message. And
100%.
I have had brushes with this with people in the
Yeah.
past. I had a student, in fact, years ago who was working with me, and it's a year-long course. And she gets through the first 4 months maybe and stopped showing up for class. But I noticed that she's still doing a lot of her psychic stuff and doing bigger and bigger and bigger things like
Mm-hmm.
galleries and all kinds of stuff. And I started to feel a little concerned
Mm-hmm.
because she wasn't doing the healing part,
Mm.
the part that gives you a solid, stable foundation.
Spiritual bypassing.
Right. She was just up
Mm-hmm.
here with this stuff.
Yep.
And I was concerned. And then she started avoiding me. And, so I just had to let that go because I can't control other people. I can only
That
advise.
is not your responsibility.
Right. And she did. She eventually ended up crashing out. Like
Hmm.
I'm talking about with like lawsuits against her and people looking for her actively and, stuff like that.
Right.
So that was like the big aha for me. Like, if I'm going to work with students, they have to be able to stay grounded. They have to be
Hmm.
able to do that healing and stabilizing part first,
Hmm.
or at least simultaneous to the other stuff
Right.
as well. Um, and I've seen other people, I've had client years ago, a client who ended up in and out of mental hospitals because
Hmm.
she was so aware psychically what was going on, but then she couldn't ground herself to what was
Hmm.
actually happening. And she was in
Right.
a constant state of,
Couldn't or refused?
that's a really good question. I can't answer for
I
her.
and I'm not expecting you to. It's more of like there's so much of these things that we use as scapegoats potentially that are really rooted in choice
I'm gonna say
or
that one.
fear of choice.
I'm gonna say that one in particular that I'm talking about. I think this had to do with ancestral wounds.
Interesting.
She was from another country, spoke
Hmm.
another language as her original language, and there had been a lot of wars in that country. And so she
Oh,
comes
that's a
here,
lot.
yeah, and she's
Yeah.
technically safe, and she goes through her healing process and all of that kind of stuff. But then she ends up stuck in a state of demons are after me, and there's all of these attachments on me, and there's
Hmm.
portals everywhere, and I can't get out of this. And it was, and we had healing sessions, but I would give her homework to do to keep
Hmm.
herself grounded. And she was too out here to do any of the grounding stuff. She wasn't doing.
Right. Well, and that's where I would recommend if you come across anything like that again, and because this is what literally, because like this is something I've been working with my guides as well, is like if you're in that position where you feel that there are entities, attachments, whatever, like then just go in the spirit world and set up protections. You know what I mean? That's where it's like, I mean, I work with dragons and I have a specific dragon that does a lot of my protections, including puts me under the veil so that I can't even be found. Do you know what I mean? So being able to mentally, and it'll take time, obviously per person and stuff, but it's like if you can't come down to earth to integrate that way, then put the protections up so that eventually you feel safe enough to come back down to earth. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I feel like there might have been a lot more for that particular person to look
A
into. And
100%. This isn't a cure-all, but this is
no, I think that this person, what I'm saying is, I think that they needed more of their ancestral healing work,
Mm,
and they were coming to healers over and over and over again, but then not doing
sure.
the work in between.
Yeah.
And honestly, every time we got on the phone, it was like talking to a different person. She didn't even remember the stuff we talked about before or the homework that was given. So it was a pretty intense experience for
That's
her.
interesting. That's like making me think of DID.
I see your wheels turning.
Yeah.
But not
I
just
love talking about anything mental health, like wrapped into spirituality. Like that's like my favorite subject.
not to like discourage anyone else, because here's the reality. Even with a kundalini awakening, even with neurodivergence, even with fast healing, as long as you are doing your healing work
Hmm.
and actively grounding yourself, you're not going to spin out. This isn't
Right.
something that just happens a dime a dozen or anything. And in fact, I will say this to throw it on the positive end. I had a
Yeah.
different client a handful of years ago, a very young man. He was an older teen.
Hmm.
Um, he ended up, I don't know how he did it. He went into a deep meditation and got so deep that he somehow ended up in the pineal gland, like,
Mm.
where there's the codes
Hmm.
and the geometric shapes. And he like saw the code of the universe and it
Love
cracked him. Like he came out of that and couldn't
it.
communicate. He couldn't. do anything. They put him in a his family put him in a mental hospital for a month or so, but he came
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
and he did better. He got more healing work done. He did more grounding, and he was able to process what he saw and understood
Right.
in mathematical equations and like come into his body and into his power in a very beautiful way.
Yeah.
So that he was a big success story of like reaching so far and then
Right.
being able to
Right.
contain it.
And the thing is that, it's again kind of coming back to my point earlier, like everybody's journey is different and intention is everything paired
Mhm.
with action. So like it is, I mean, are there potentially like woo moments like on the spiritual journey? Absolutely, 100%. But also like you can also be very steady and like steady Freddy and super grounded naturally and not have to go into that at all. There's plenty of people I know that have never experienced spiritual psychosis and they're wide open, So it's just important to remember that there are success stories, there are some not so successful stories, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual and trusting yourself and doing the work.
Doing the work. Yes. And like you said, the definition of that is being able to tell what's real and what's not.
Mm.
And not all of that is through vision if you're
Discernment.
a visual person, right? Some of it's discerning the emotion, because I've seen some very real things where I'm like, is that real or nah? But then
Mm-hmm.
being able to like feel or eventually figure out,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so that was real on the other side, not
Right.
real on this side. So discernment and experience and wisdom comes into all of this as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think also a lot of people forget that you can prescribe to anything within anything in life or not. You can prescribe to the societal structure or not. You can prescribe to the fact that you have a huge personality or not. You can prescribe to uh, working with dragons or working with Gaia exclusively. You can prescribe to being a star seed. You can prescribe to being an earth seed, or you can prescribe to just being yourself.
I like that.
And, and that's where it's like, go ahead and go absorb as much as you can, but also know that like your truth is going to change because truth is fluid.
Mhm.
My truth at 10 is absolutely not my truth now. You know what I mean? And that's going to be the same. Like, and that's where, specifically Christianity really grinds my gears is because it's the one way, the one truth, the one blah, 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 right? But it doesn't count for the fact that like we change as people, our emotions change moment to moment, much less year to year, day to day. You know what I mean? So it's just giving yourself freedom to be and know that you have got your back, because that's
Mhm.
how you get to that point of security. Because here's the thing, your chakras are your energy centers, right? Your chakras aren't outside of you, they're literally within. Oh, did we lose her? Hi. Okay, you were doing the spinny thing um on my end. I don't know, it's okay. But your root chakra is literally inside of you, which means your safety and stability is literally only within your control, no one
Mm,
else's.
beautiful. That feels very grounding and internalizing as well.
Mhm.
So we only have a few minutes left. So this is probably gonna throw a
Let it
wrench in everything just to.
just let it rip.
Okay, so I was reading something. Something came
Mhm.
across my feed the other day where it was like red flags of working with a healer.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I have to say, now the post itself, I don't think was a bad post. It
Mhm.
was basically just saying how there's lots of healers out there, there's lots of facilitators out there, but just because they're doing something spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that they know more than you or that
Nope.
everything they say is an absolute.
Correct.
Because like you said, truth is fluid and you can
Mhm.
facilitate things without being the most knowledgeable or the most healed.
100%.
Everyone's just human. And it was trying to bring awareness to that, I think. But then I went to the comments
Mm.
Hundreds and thousands of comments. And everybody in the comments, not everybody, but most of the people in the comments were red flag, tantra anything, red flag, um, calling themselves a shaman, red flag, this, like everything, red flag saying download, like everything that's within our spiritual verbiage, that's
Mm-hmm.
within the language of how we speak or how we describe ourselves so that people know that we're a safe space and they know that
Mm-hmm.
they can come to us. It felt like the general public was saying all of those things make us feel like you're not a safe space and that you're inauthentic. And I was just like,
Perception is reality.
I was like, excuse me, excuse me. I had a whole lot of choice words when I laid in bed with my husband. He was just so tired, and he's like, uh-huh. And I was like,
He's like, yes, honey.
yes. And so um I just felt like we should address that. I'm not even sure where it's supposed to go, honestly, because it feels like when we're talking about authenticity and safe containers and flow and trust, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like sometimes people who need healing don't know who to go to or who to
Mm,
trust,
100%.
um, or how they can even find that community if
Mm-hmm.
they don't understand the verbiage or what we're talking about.
Right. And I think the biggest thing that's coming to mind right now is that there is also success and failure.
Mm.
There are people that I have come across in my spiritual path that taught me the opposite lesson of what I was hoping to learn. But guess what? It's still a lesson. And that's a perspective that I choose to have. And that is where the comment section of that post, um, that sounds like a religious trauma wound if I've ever heard one personally, because they're absolutely perpetuating judgment on something that they have no business doing. Because I have no business telling you who to go get healed by, period. And also, it's like as you go along in your spiritual journey, you will get the draw to people that you are supposed to get the draw to, period. And you're going to get that either way, even if that ends up being a lesson that's uncomfy. Because guess what? The healing never stops, the growth never stops. And it's literally about I came out of my I had a breathwork ceremony where I went under actually and was a participant. And I came out with a few big concepts, but the one that this is reminding me of is everyone is my teacher, as I am everyone's. There
Mhm.
is something to learn in every single circumstance. It's a matter of you choosing, because again, choice coming back around, choosing to see that and letting go of the bitterness.
Mhm.
And I think that, it's this is societal wounds coming up because the thing is like you could come to me as your healer for 10 years. But then we might end up going this way. And it's not that there's any hard feelings at all, but you might need to go find a new healer. Or maybe you're at the point where you're like, I don't think I need you as a healer anymore. I think I trust myself enough to heal
Mhm.
myself. Just like this is why you get mentors, right? You don't get a mentor because you need to be told how to live. You get a mentor because you've hit a ceiling and you need someone to hold your hand and bust through that ceiling with you to make it your new floor. And that's going to be perpetual as well. I have two mentors and for different things. So it's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of openness. And it's also a matter of not wanting to come at anything with an attack,
Mhm.
which is what I feel. And that's wounding to me. If you're attacking someone, that's a wound. Like that's coming from a place of insecurity. That's coming from a place of malice even, or even jealousy, just depending on the person. So, but it's not our job to judge on the receiving end or otherwise.
Absolutely. And it was kind of showing me like people and healing. And it felt like it was focused on how some people aren't as healed as other people. And when you're not as healed as other people and you facilitate things, some of what you're facilitating brings attention back to you because your woundedness needs that validation.
Right.
Um, but there's like levels,
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just starting your healing path, working with someone who's maybe just healed a little bit, that person still has a higher vibration than you and they can help heal.
100%. Well, that's the thing is I've found that a few of the people that I was looking to for guidance, I was literally there to help them transmute energy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because I'm a sentient powerhouse, so I can walk into a room, take people's energy and just like do alchemy, and that's a gift of mine. And that's the thing is that if we want to dissect everything constantly and point a finger, that's a whole other portion of healing you're going to need to address.
Absolutely. And I've already have notes because I'm going to teach on that, how students help teachers become teachers, because teachers aren't teachers till they have a student.
Correct.
So I'm going to get into this, and I feel like I want you to come back and talk about religious trauma with me.
Oh boy.
Are you up for it, Kai?
I am. My religious trauma, it sure was deep. So, dad, a pastor in the army.
And actually, Kai is originally from somewhere just an hour from where I am now. Is that right?
I'm not. My dad's from
Your family is.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have family that's within an hour of where you're at.
I'm gonna go visit them. I'm gonna go have hi.
I'll tell you which one's safe to go to.
Maybe they won't be safe with me.
No,
because they offer so much safety.
I think she'd like you.
Because they offer so much safety. But then, like, within so much safety, they'd also be like, oh, wow, I see myself.
Yeah. I mean, she also comes from the same religious trauma background. She just didn't have the pastor for a father.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. Just me.
Is there anything else you want people to know, or anything else you want to say about what we've talked about, or how to go from here?
I think that if there is one thing I can tell anybody on a healing journey, a spiritual journey, period, that is to be gentle with yourself and be kind with yourself more than anyone else. That is like the best advice I can give.
It really is good advice. Thank you. The change is coming, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And creating this emotional safe space, this safe emotional container, becoming the healed masculine version of yourself to hold everybody else and to be able to expand emotionally for your community and for yourself and for change to happen so we can come into our most empowered versions of self. That's where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kai, so much for coming on our channel, for being with us. All of Kai's links are here in the description, guys. So go check them out. Make sure you don't miss out on what Kai has to offer. And we'll be back here again sometime soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so. This was fun. I had a good time.
Bye, everybody. Earth and Star has a new segment beginning July 25th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is going to be a healing segment. It's called Wild Star Healing Temple. And it's a healing collaboration between Kai and myself. And when you join that live show on the last Friday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be doing angelic coding, some of that somatic clearing that Kai was talking about, breath work, refilling, chakra cleansing. When you show up for yourself to that healing temple, we're going to powerfully show up for you. So if you want to see Kai in their full healing power, and if you want to be able to heal without having to step directly into a session, just to be able to come into a community group space with people who love you and support you and receive those healing energies, join us the last Friday of each month for the Wild Star Healing Temple. See you soon.